So there's Kim. So let's see if the microphone will pick. Okay. I'm going to put the microphone near the computer and see if the crowd can hear you. Okay, is this one? I'm going to get feedback. Okay, Kim, can you talk a little bit?
Hey, how are you?
Can you all hear her? Okay, so let me adjust things. Yeah, well, I'm going to adjust things while you're doing that.
I'm here with Katie Klein from USC. She is here to talk about a school librarian, school counselor, collaboration opportunities for happier and healthier schools. Hopefully we can make that happen. Katie Klein is working with Kim Farley-Smith, who is a school counselor and her cousin. A little bit about Katie. She is a doctoral student at USC High School. She plans to focus her research on making school libraries better and more universal. Before returning to graduate school in 2021, she was the school librarian at Rising Tide Charter Public School, a middle high school in Plymouth, Massachusetts. At Rising Tide, Katie started the school's library program. Prior to that, she was the librarian at a public high school in Maine and at a girls' boarding school in Virginia. Katie earned her MLIS from Rutgers in 2005 and holds Library Media Specialist certification in Maine and in South Carolina.
Okay, let's start by having Kim introduce herself, since we didn't get the bio for her into the SCASL stuff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly Farley-Smith. I am a practicing school counselor who used to be a school teacher and also a school administrator. And I'm also in a doctoral program at the University of Cincinnati, studying counselor education. So I'm so excited that you all want to learn so much about this collaboration between school librarians and school counselors.
Okay, so let's go on to the first slide. So we're brainstorming a lot of different opportunities for collaboration because both school librarians and school counselors are people who work with the entire school population. We have a mix of academic and social emotional sort of things that we do, sort of goals that we have. So it's really a natural fit, especially since we're often so siloed that this is the kind of thing where we can really leverage this partnership and get more mileage from all of the effort that we put into everything that we do. So these are just some of the things that we were brainstorming. So like aligning strategic goals, if we have annual goals, making sure that we're on the same page about that kind of thing. Just all kinds of mutual support and making sure that we're helping each other with some of the programs that we do and resources and displays. So anything you want to say about that, Kim?
Yeah, I just think this partnership is like that, internal, I would say BFF or best friends forever kind of thing between school counseling and school librarians, because not only do you all help provide us with the skills that students need to have to be researchers, to being writers, to being inquisitive and curious about learning, this really could help us build a program that is comprehensive. And that's our goal as school counselors, is to provide a comprehensive programming that supports the academic, the college and career readiness, and the social and emotional health of every student in the building. And I just want to be honest, like most schools only have maybe 1 to 2, 3 school counselors at most, and their caseloads are 450 to 1. And there's no way that one person can reach 450 students. But if we have more support on your all side and our side, we can really be able to initiate school-wide college and career initiatives that meet them and also help them create a plan post-high school.
Thanks, that was very well said. Okay, so we had some advice about meeting, because this is something that you should do, first of all, as before the school year even starts. Definitely try and get together in the summer when you have time for that, whether that's like right after school ends for thinking about the next year, or in your preschool opening days, if you have a chance to get together and try and figure out what it is that you want to do together. So I think you as a librarian can bring some ideas, especially if this is a person that you haven't really worked with a lot and you want to make sure that you're building a solid foundation. Bring ideas about how the librarian can support healthy choices and mental health and wellness and future planning sorts of things, because I mean, there's ways that you can support everybody in the building. I'm sure that you have a list in your head of all of the things that you are doing for social studies and science and for guidance and for the gym classes. I mean, I'm sure that you can think of resources that you have, programs that you do that would relate to what they do. So just sort of jot some of that stuff down before you meet so that you have a good idea of what kinds of things you want to talk about. So one of the advantages that I think of working with counselors is that they do an analysis of a needs assessment every year, where we don't do that. I mean, in the library we tend to, did we lose Kim? We did. She'll be back. But like, we tend to think of the library as an institution that we're building. We're making it better year by year. We're adding to the collection. We're adjusting our programs, but we're tending to think of it in the long term. Where the counselors that I've talked to, they think of it as the year, because they think of it every year they have a brand new population of students that they have to work with. Some of the kids, are there for many years, and some of the kids are just there for 1 year. So they have to do the needs analysis for what they're looking at this year. So they have numbers that we don't have. They have sort of community analysis information that you may not have. And so that's what I want going into a meeting with a counselor, but I also want to make sure that it's beneficial for them to be meeting with them. If we can't get Kim back, then I'll call her and we'll get her on the phone. Because the internet here is garbage. Okay. See if I can call her. Hi, is this Kim? Hi, we lost you. Our internet is terrible. So, I'm going to put you on speaker.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay, so I gave them my spiel about meeting in the summer before school starts. What would you like to add?
I think the biggest thing is, if you've been in a school as a school librarian, a lot of times the professional development don't really align to us, and it's the same thing in the school counseling world too. So, utilizing this time to really strategically create a master calendar that supports, the initiatives of academic, college and career readiness, and social emotional learning is really, really critical in ensuring everyone's on the same page. A lot of times parents will reach out to you as school as librarians for more information and guidance, and if we're all saying the same thing, parents are always going to get the same message. And I think that's really important to start that early, to set that tone. And then also just being able to assess the students' needs is really important as well. So as school counselors, part of our role is to create a needs assessment every year to see where the students need additional support, and utilizing that as a data point to say, this is the programming that we need. These are the resources and the books or the tools that teachers need to be equipped with, or school administrators, or even students need to be equipped with, that we can have within our libraries. SAT, ACT prep, I was hoping after COVID, no lie, that it would go away. But it's still here to stay. So, any really aligns to that school mission and vision statement.
Yeah, I agree. And while you were disconnected, I was telling them how useful it is for us to get your needs assessment information because we don't usually get that in the library.
No, and I never even thought about this type of collaboration until, Katie and I were talking, and I was like, this just makes sense. It was like this big light bulb that said, we are both such a siloed profession that you have a wealth of knowledge, we have a wealth of knowledge, but like there's meeting in the middle, which can cause like an amazing explosion of supports. That wraparound supports is what is so incredibly critical. And a lot of times, like I look at our school, a lot of students like to eat lunch in the library because it's that quiet space. So our individual who's not a licensed librarian, but she acts as one in that role, is able to identify students who may not have good positive peer relationships, or who are struggling with that transition to high school, in our case, or those students who feel like they're not part of that school community. And just those small things that you see on an everyday that we may not as a counselor can really make a difference in that social emotional health of the students.
Yeah, I definitely had kids eating in the library at the public school where I worked. The independent schools were they wanted the kids to eat with each other. But at the public school, I definitely had kids who felt more comfortable in the library than in the whole cafeteria.
And the other thing I think too is like post-COVID, right? Our students are struggling with that social emotional balance. And how cool would it be for school librarians to be able to have those data points, those support points and the strengths to really help support our students post-COVID of, learning that it's okay for quiet, it's okay for mindfulness, but like how can we better support them to gain skills that they lost for 3 years? Mm-hmm. And I really do believe, working with students right now, that we're not looking at a 3-year deficit of skill sets. We are looking at a whole lot larger than that. I think we're going to see this impact of, how to manage big emotions for at least the next 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So this partnership is more needed now than ever.
Yeah, totally agree. And sort of glad I'm not on the front lines right now. But I'm so happy that all of you are. Yeah, okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide, which is the school library collection. So this is where, as a librarian, it always really helps to get feedback from your peers on, like, what are you teaching, what kinds of things are you seeing students wanting to pick up, just getting some feedback from our peers. But I feel like with counselors, there are specific things that they can help with, that they can identify. This area has really changed a lot lately, so you may want to look and see whether these books are dated. You might want to do some weeding, some updating in this particular area. So if they can do that, that can be really helpful for us to target our energy. And then also things like there are databases that are specifically on health topics, to have a counselor maybe take a look and see whether that might be a useful tool for them. And if so, then getting that subscription. And the other thing we were talking about is having a satellite collection in the school counselor's office where they can sort of just hand books to kids if they feel like, this is gonna help you think about what you're going through. Just to have some things on hand, which wouldn't even necessarily have to be checked out formally through the library, but would be in your catalog, so you would know where to find it if you needed to. But that things that maybe even sensitive topics that kids wouldn't necessarily want to have people know that they were checking out or that they were looking at. If they could be in the counselor's office, that could be a really good way to get to books to kids who need them. Particularly if they're books that are on censored lists and you can sort of have them under the radar in your school, that might be a good thing to do. But I know in your school there are some things you're not allowed to talk about, so.
Yeah. So when you're in like private school settings, especially like religious school settings, you know, there are certain topics in our contracts, like LGBTQ plus we are not allowed to talk about. Doesn't mean that we don't secretly sometimes do that, but or teen pregnancy, you know, if you're in a really religious school, it's off limits too, or even like safe sex, abstinence, all of those things are pretty much like taboo to talk about as school counselors. But, you know, having this extra resource where you're a third party is so incredibly important into that support. One thing that I will say, like, our son, I have a little kindergartner, and in the state of Ohio, they do not have school counselors in elementary school. It's not, you know, our legislation does not require that, and which is a big deficit. But what they do require in elementary schools are school librarians. And there are times when, you know, my son has big emotions. And what you really need, there is a mental health provider, not a school counselor, a mental health provider company that supports students. And I did notice when I went in there for a school tour, is they have their own reading section by grade level that has big emotion books. And when the kids need a timeout, there is like a book or a coloring sheet or some type of thing that the school library has, the sensory bins that school libraries have put together, and they're in that room for students to access, which I thought was a really creative idea.
Yeah.
And powerful too.
Yeah, it's good that Ohio requires librarians because there are some states where that is not the case. When I was in Maine, elementary schools were not required to have school librarians, and they often only have like a part-time person who's shared throughout the district, which is ridiculous. Yeah, so a lot of problems in our areas for need for advocacy to make sure that students are getting the resources that they need.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to move on to programming and instruction. So I mean, all the kinds of things that you would do anyway, just being able to do those sometimes with the counselor, and sometimes just knowing when they're doing their FAFSA workshops, so you can make sure that you have the right materials out on display, and just you know, having another place where you can have those things. And you're probably already doing this, but it's a good reminder. The other thing that I would say about this is that we often assume that our library is a safe space, but the definition for safe space is sometimes sort of fuzzy and squishy, and if we can have counselors sort of help to make sure that when we say that we have a safe space in the library, that that's really what it is, that it really is a safe space. Kim, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I think this is where that collaboration piece comes into really into action here. Because every single month, as school counselors, there is some kind of theme of every month. Like October is like the big college push, right? That's college month. November is scholarship month and money month. And December is like social and emotional. So like every month has a theme as we start really going into our comprehensive planning. And I could just see this to be a natural support where we're not reinventing the wheel all the time and exhausting ourselves, that we could really feed into that programming to be supportive. I think the biggest thing too that a lot of times with the writing workshops, oh my gosh, the kids had access to get college application help, bringing rep visits in, having a place to host them even is like a huge piece. So if we can get kids into the library, they're most likely to stay into the library, which they may even pick up a book for some of them. But this being a real hub and a heartbeat of the school, which I think the school counseling office and the library should be the heart of the school.
I agree, obviously.
We're a little biased, but it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the next slide is professional development. So at least when I was a school librarian, and I think this is true in a lot of schools, you're part of the professional development team, or you're asked sometimes to give professional development. So for me, a lot of that was, this is how you use the databases, please bring students to the library, this is what I can do to help you with planning units, that kind of thing, where we can also get some of these other social emotional learning things in and support them. Because I know, at least when I was in Maine, the counselors had to do a suicide prevention workshop for the teachers. That was a required professional development. People had to get certified on that every other year. But that was just the counselor. That was totally on the counselors. And it was on them to make sure that everybody showed up. And if they didn't show up, they had to chase them down and make them watch the video later. So if there's anything that we can do to help with that kind of stuff, then I think that there's a clear place for the library to be helping, especially with support resources, just to have other things available that you can hand out. But I mean, I've heard of people having teacher book clubs. Anybody in here do that? Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And if there's things that the counselor can kind of, pass to you to say, here, this would be a great sort of topic for you all to be learning about, then that's the kind of thing that we can do together.
Yes, professional development, what a beautiful thing when it's beneficial, impactful, and it makes change within our profession, and then also in the professions around us. I could say about our Katie, just being able to have a place for those resources is just so incredibly important. I do want to emphasize, for teacher support, trauma is a huge piece, and I know it's a word that we hear all the time, but, wanting two students to have experienced some kind of trauma in their lifetime, and the numbers are even more staggering, where they're saying post-COVID, almost every single student will have at least one adverse childhood experience that is going to impact their development. And I just will be honest with you, with where the teaching profession is heading, I think you all are going to be needed even more as another place to get that professional development, to have a moment to understand and learn something new that can impact the teaching profession in general. And I think administrators are really going to have to turn to you in my profession to really start seeing some big changes happen.
Okay, so my next slide's advocating together. So this is where we have opportunities to be on the same team. And, when we as librarians have faced a lot of censorship challenges in the last few years. And so we really need to make sure that we have our library advisory committee ready, and that we have our selection policies solid, that we have all of these things in place, and counselors could be a really good voice on that committee to say, and the reason that we need this book is because we have kids who need this book. But then librarians can also be on the school counseling advisory board, and I've heard from administrators before how useful it is to have the voice of people who see kids across grades and see them over the years as they grow up. So we're really kind of in one of those few unique positions where we do see those kids. That we don't just see them in 5th grade, we see them from 1st grade to 5th grade sometimes, or in our case, at least in my case, I was at a middle high school, so sometimes from 5th grade all the way to 12th grade. And if you actually get to follow them through those grades, you have a different perspective than the teachers who only saw them in 7th grade. So that can be really helpful. But there's a lot of different ways that you can advocate together, but one of the things that I always found really useful was anytime I got a book that I knew that the counselors should be happy about, that they should know about, that they should get into kids' hands, first thing, before I put it out on the shelf, I went down to the counselor's office and said, Siobhan, let me show you this book. It's a graphic novel about sex ed. It's so great. You should look at it. And she would look at it, and then she would be able to say, what she thought about it. And she was always very supportive of my choices, and I think that was really helpful too, because sometimes I had kids who, like with that particular book, there were some kids who were like, that book has a penis in it. I said, yep, sex ed, it does, and if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to check it out. But just to know that the counselor was already on board, and that this kid, if they went home and told their parents, there's a book with a penis in it in my school library, if their parents called the school about it, I knew that I would have the counselor on my team to say, yeah, this is middle high school and kids need to know about this. Which obviously wouldn't be the case everywhere. Counselors aren't universally supportive, but assuming that you have a supportive counselor, that's really a good thing. But yeah, just working together in any kind of way, and being able to have another person on your team to say that what you're doing is useful and important, and that what you're getting you have good justification for.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would say even it sounds silly, or even our title of advocacy. So we are no longer called guidance counselors. We are school counselors, because guidance counselors infer to that idea that we only guide students to careers and that's it, and post-secondary planning. School counselors encompass that comprehensive planning. We also have our own advisory board. It's called School Counselor Advisory Board, so SCAB for short, which sounds a little weird when you're idiots. But we need those individuals to serve on our boards as well, just as much as yours is focused librarian development, ours is focused student development, and we should really be on each other's boards that really help promote that idea of advocacy. And if we all have the same voice of what's best for students and how to serve students, I think this could really be a game changer for everyone.
Okay, so this is an exciting slide, because this is future research. We're hoping to do some empirical research in this area so that we can publish on it and tell people what the best practices are, find out for real what the best practices are. So hopefully we're going to have a survey out this summer. We'll see. And we'd really like to do some case studies. So if you are interested in participating in this, for the case studies, what we would hope for is a pair, so a school librarian and a school counselor who are either already working together or who would like to start working together, so that we can work with you together. Anything you want to say about our research dreams?
I am just excited about this, because this is something that's not in our literature. As a counselor educator, this isn't even on the radar in any coursework yet on school counseling side. They always talk about teacher and administrator collaboration. So after Katie and I had this conversation, this is something that we're putting into our programming at UC, of talking about who you can collaborate with and the importance. So I am so excited that we're starting to bridge some gaps where we really need to see how this collaboration can really benefit students. And I hope that you want to join in, and hopefully you all say yes to any kind of research, because I just think this is going to be game-changing.
Yeah. All right, so that is the end of our slides. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. Anybody have anything? Comments, questions?
I was just gonna say, I try and leverage like our book awards, state book awards list, and share this with the counselors. We do a teacher summer reading thing, and that involves our book awards, but I try and like look at the themes of those books on that list and give them recommendations. Hey, you might wanna read this one.
Yeah.
When Starfish was on the list this year, like,
Yeah.
all of my counselors read it.
That's good.
And it was very popular with my kids too, so then they could have conversations with them about it, and then it was a good like kind of jumping off point. If there was a kid who was struggling with something that himself was in that book.
Yeah, and Starfish,
It's amazing.
so great. Yeah. Yeah.
I know one thing that
that too. Isn't it great?
It was so awesome, and I mean, like,
Yeah.
we didn't have to do it, it was offered to everybody in our district, but our counselors also had to be there, so it was just nice to be in a training, and like, cause we like, as librarians, we get a lot of stuff, that, and I'm like, yo, I can I'm telling you this, I don't like you, but I think it's just very useful just to be able to identify, like, when the child is having a mental health crisis, and be able to work alongside your guidance counselors and your social workers in order to get them the help and the resources that they need. So that's just one thing that I think would really lend well to collaborating with the
Yeah,
guidance counselors.
I
because
agree.
I am not a mental health professional.
Right.
And the training was great, but I want to be able to send it to them all.
Yeah, yeah.
After I know you identify, I'm gonna send them on to you. So I think that's just a great way to have that connection if you're able to do it. I don't remember what the organization was.
Yeah, I can look it up if people want to do that. If you can't get a live training in your district, you can do it online. They have online training.